George Zimmerman has a little more than 24 hours to return to jail in Sanford as he awaits his second-degree murder trial in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. Yesterday afternoon, the judge revoked Zimmerman's bond. He agreed with the prosecution, the judge did, that Zimmerman and his wife misled the court about how much money they had when bond was set at $150,000. During this same court hearing yesterday, the judge agreed to release more of the evidence in the case once he has reviewed the documents and removed items that aren't subject to disclosure under the state's public records law. Both the prosecution and the defense raised concerns, but the material is expected to be made public in about 30 days. Channel 4's Scott Johnson has more on this tug of war going on between a fair press and a fair trial.
Prosecutors and defense lawyers aren't the only attorneys with a goal in the trial of George Zimmerman. Media companies are also pushing for something. That's all the information they can get to be made public. That includes things like witness names and addresses, including other 911 calls that haven't been released. Angela Corey is the special prosecutor in the case. Her office is fighting to keep a lot of this information sealed until trial.
The Constitution guarantees a right to a public trial, not to have a trial conducted over the internet way prior to before discovery depositions are taken.
Her office is arguing some witnesses could be afraid to testify if their identity are released. The publicity of this case is apparently also taking its toll on Angela Corey, who has been attacked at times in the press over her role in the case, which she says is frustrating.
It's not fair for people to be able to give opinions about our case, and we can't respond because of the rules of ethics. I can't fire back at some of these people who on a national level are making accusations against me personally and against our case because I'm not allowed to. But boy, if I could, I absolutely would shut them down because they're wrong.
And some media outlets are likening this case to Casey Anthony's case, the mom who was originally accused of killing her young daughter and then let off. They say in that case down in Orlando that the media had access to all the information they're asking for in the Zimmerman case. Scott Johnson, Channel 4, the local station.
This morning, to give us a little perspective on all of these developments from yesterday, we have John Phillips, an attorney here from Jacksonville, in the studio to talk about this. Now, you said you were a little surprised that it happened when it did.
Right. It's been leading up to this point. You know, I thought when he first made some of the dates, there were some red flags there, and then you found out about this pot of money, and they've known about it for a little while.
We'll reattach you here.
Okay, thank you. And so, but for it to kind of come weeks later, it was a little bit of a shock.
Now, you're talking about, I mean, obstruction of justice. Now we're all of a sudden we're talking, I mean, this does not look good for Zimmerman and his defense, but I mean, we'll talk about the pickle that his wife is in now.
Right. You know, they said they had to literally scrape money together. There's jailhouse conversations where they were using code based upon, you know, single dollar amounts that really you had to add 6 figures to that.
Right.
Or 5. And so to deceive the court is obstruction of justice, to lie to the court is perjury, and they both are along that line of, I wouldn't be surprised if Angela Corey filed obstruction of justice charges against one or both, which, you know, demeans his credibility.
Wow. Yeah, they could be heard saying 15 when they were talking about 15,000. And I think 100 for 100,000 was the other number as well. Can he get out now? Okay, he's going to go back and he's got to be back in jail by 2:30 tomorrow, 2:30 on Sunday. Is it likely he can get back out?
The judge can look at all the stuff that he has and determine whether this was an honest mistake, but he's got the passport issue. There's so much that he failed to disclose, and you know, when you put your client on the stand and you put his wife, you know, it was a voice recording, and his whole family, and they deceive you, you know, a judge feels burned by that, and likely he may not give a bond again.
Scott Johnson interviewed another attorney, Don Mayers, to get a little perspective on this, and he says he doesn't think it's going to really impact when it comes time to have a trial. What do you think?
I disagree. And if they amend charges and add some of the stuff, you saw it in Casey Anthony's case, where they had lying to police as all those minor charges. Ultimately, that's what she got hit with. And here they may add some of those minor charges related to this. Again, it might be a separate case entirely, but you know, as my mom always said, a liar is a liar and a thief's a thief, and this case is all about his credibility, and this is bad.
Yeah, I mean, will people remember this, though, by the time it does go to trial? I mean, we're talking, you know, could be a little less than a year from now, probably at the earliest, right? At least 2013.
Right. You know, they say 6 months but it's probably more like a year.
Yeah.
And
people remember this.
The way our courthouse is going, if they're trying it here, it could be 2014, a whole nother subject. But you know, time tends to heal some of these wounds. You know, his credibility was going up and up and up before this because his story was being told. There were pictures being released. Well, now we've shot back down again. And O'Mara's credibility to me is a little, you know, skiffy too. He's got an uphill battle.
But again, do you think really people will remember this when it comes time to trial?
I think so. And again, you got to pull out what the jurors know, and the jurors are generally the ones that weren't paying attention to this in the beginning. So
another point too is you know, we're talking about when this trial could happen, you know, 6 months to a year, maybe even longer than that. But it really puts a lot of pressure on O'Mara with his client now behind bars and not out on bond. You know, it puts a lot of pressure on him not to delay this thing. You know, he doesn't want his guy to just rot in a cell.
6 months in jail's hard time, and a year's even harder. It's, you know, and that's, I said early on, I actually texted Bruce, I would prefer him in jail in this case. You know, you never want your client in jail.
For his safety?
For his safety, for what can happen on the outside with this case. And you've already got a guy that's built his own website to tell his story. You just worry about George Zimmerman because he's very passionate about his defense. And now his credibility starting to be impugned. It's a problem.
All right, John Phillips, Jacksonville attorney, thank you so much. Well, the authors say they went behind the scenes of 14 crumbling but beautiful structures here in Jacksonville to reveal their past. A book called Reclaiming Jacksonville is a brand new book out. It's examining what we've built as a city and what we've left behind. We're going to sit down with 2 of the authors coming up here this Saturday morning. Plus, just a little more than 2 weeks until it's time to let your father know how much you appreciate him. We've got some hot gift ideas from our friends at Tech Launchpad for Father's Day. That's coming up next as the morning show this Saturday continues.